Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, depending on when you're watching or listening to this edition of Hypnosis Week. I'm going to introduce you to a gentleman in a moment that I've known via connecting through the internet. We've never met live in person as yet, but that will happen at some point. A gentleman who is now very established as a clinical hypnotherapist, specifically working with sort of niche of people in management and stuff, you know, peak performance, but also with members of the general public with a particular speciality in helping people to sleep better, overcoming insomnia, as well as a whole host of other things that we'll talk about during the next hour or so. But he used to be, for over 23 years, off the top of my head, just over 23 years, was a daily face on television in El Paso, if I remember correctly, in Texas, because he's known there as not just their emerging hypnotic helper, but also as their local weatherman, as we call them in England, or if you want the more scientific name, meteorologist, who also presented the results of that study on television on a daily basis. So please welcome to Hypnosis Week, the man you can see at the side of me, depending on which way Zoom decide to take the recording, all the way from El Paso in Texas, Mr. Chuck DeBroder. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, Alex, or Jonathan Royal, aka, as I first became to know you, it is a pleasure. Did you know, and I told you on Messenger, you've been on my whiteboard to be on an interview with for a long, long time, because I've admired the way you look and teach hypnosis, look at it, and you simplify things. And I learned from you some 20 years ago. Can you believe that?
Wow. It's quite possible that back then I may have still, well, I certainly had some stuff out still then in my old stage name, Alex Leroy, before it transitioned to Jonathan Royal.
You sent me a Hypnotorious DVD.
Wow. You are going back quite a while. The DVD seems so long ago now as well, though.
Doesn't it?
You know, I started out supplying people via VHS tapes in England or NTSC videotapes when we shipped to America. Then it moved to DVD, and now like nobody wants DVDs. It's all online streaming and downloads and all that kind of crazy stuff.
Yeah, I also bought an induction, 2 DVDs from you in one little cover, I believe. And boy, you know, it really secured the basis of my hypnotic style. And complete mind therapy, which I always give you credit in starting, because you're the one who made it come together. And it is, like the name says, you always say, complete, right? So yeah, I want to thank you for giving me another career. I call myself the hypnotic weatherman. And I tell all my clinical hypnotherapy clients, how many therapists can you also get a accurate local weather forecast from? Not many.
Short of them looking out the window and just telling you what they can see there,
Sure.
and then I don't think anyone off the top of my head.
No. And actually, I am a weather geek, and I'm a degreed and certified meteorologist. And altogether, I spent 2 years in Lubbock, Texas on TV, and I made more money as a Chili's waiter than I did on TV. And I had to do both because I'd come up to the table, and they, you know, in Texas had country accents, and they're like, Chuck, what are you doing here? I love your weather. I'm like, how do you like your fajitas? I got to pay 2 college degrees. I got to pay my rent. And yeah, so I should have known then that the TV career was not the super high paying, but I loved it and I enjoyed it. And now you can make more money at the local grocery store working than you can on the local TV station, because our TV is now our cell phone, right? And
Yeah,
so
more and more people kind of almost running their own TV shows via like YouTube and Instagram and all that kind of stuff these days, isn't there?
yeah, I'm live every weekday evening, Monday through Friday, at 6:30 Mountain Daylight Time, with a 1 hour worldwide weather newscast. So I still get to do the weather thing. My wife does 98% of all the social media production, as well as she writes and produces the newscast every day. And I'm still not paying her enough money, but you know, that's a whole other thing. But here, yes. But here's the thing. During the day, then I see people via Zoom all over the world. There for a while, I had a lot of clients in Romania, a lot of vampires, which worked out on the time change. And then I have clients in Nepal. So I start my day at 7 a.m. and then I'll see clients start time all the way up to 4:30, and then I do a newscast. So if I see 3 clients and do an hour newscast, I talk a lot during that day. But you and I are talking animals. This podcast may go 2 hours, 3 hours, who knows? Yeah.
Who knows? So look, for those people, obviously, I know some of your background. There will be some people who are watching or listening to this, and this will be the first time that they've encountered Chuck DeBroder, because they don't live near enough to have encountered your career as a television weatherman. You've alluded to the fact a little tiny bit, you know, obviously that you went to university, you studied meteorology, you ended up working in TV and stuff. But while slightly expanding on that, can you also tell us the classic, this is, I ask everyone this as the first question, what is your origin story? What led you from being young Chuck DeBroder at school to where you are today?
Well, you know, just like you, I started performing at an early age. Now, I wasn't in a circus like you and your dad, but I was in musicals. I was kind of like Ashley, the performer. You know that young lady? Yeah, your daughter.
My daughter, for anyone watching or listening who doesn't know, if you go on social media, especially Facebook, and you put in Ashley, Ashley Alexandra performer, or go on my profile, you'll find her there. She's big into musical theatre. So, all right, so your background, you're in musical theatre.
I was a main role, Captain Corcoran, in anything. No, it was in HMS Pinafore in an operetta when I was in 6th grade. I had a very forward-thinking and advanced music teacher in grade school. And I remember the character Dick Deadeye. He, you know, this is before PC and safety of children. They actually gave this kid a cat of 9 tails whip. And in the middle of the performance, he hit me in the back of the head and opened up the back of my head. And talk about being a great method actor. I just toughed it through as I felt the blood coming down the back of my neck. But anyway, memories coming into things. And then I was in middle school and high school. I performed in musicals around Denver, Colorado. I'm originally from Denver, beautiful state, and a lot of mountains, a lot of weather. Now, we lived in the foothills of Green Mountain looking at Red Rocks Amphitheater. And if you've ever seen music videos, U2 made Red Rocks famous right when they were up and coming on a cold October day, where you could see the breath of Bono coming out of his mouth. Anyway, beautiful, natural outdoor amphitheater. So I grew up there, but you couldn't see the weather until it was on top of you. But my mom watched every weatherman on every channel every day, and she hypnotized me into keeping weather in the back of my mind, in my subconscious mind. But my first degree from CSU Pueblo is in public relations and broadcasting. I did radio for a while. I won the Silver Mike Award as a freshman in college. And then I was on radio station getting minimum wage. And then I got hired by Adolph Coors Company, the world's largest single site beer brewery. I was a tour guide every summer. It was a tough job, Alex. There were 10 women tour guides from all around the country to every guy. It was 8 cases or 2 kegs of beer a month, half price. I forced myself for 5 summers to go back to that job. And then I was in a fraternity in my first degree in university, and it was Kappa Sigma. And there was an internship that people all over the world applied in PR. Well, I used what later I found out was hypnosis. I called every manager and left a message as Chuck DeBroder on their list. And they're like, who the heck's this Chuck DeBroder? They'd go to lunch. Did you get a message from Chuck DeBroder? Yeah, he really wants this internship. Well, the guy in charge of making the final decision was in my fraternity. And I probably had one of the lowest grade point averages of all the people applying, but I got the internship. So that was cool. But here I go from radio, a talking animal, to a small cubicle. And I was like, this isn't for me. So I didn't want to say what if. And I got a second degree in meteorology. Now, during this time, I was interested in mentalism. You know, Uri Geller. I have a lot of the books. In fact, I didn't even set this up, but a lot of the books that you have, Gellerism
Revealed. Yeah, great book.
Contact Mind Reading Expanded. All these books.
Also known as Hauschranism, which is muscle reading for viewers or listeners who don't know, which is a way of feeling people's muscle reaction. So you can ask them questions, and by virtue, basically, if you in hypnotherapy, people might be already aware of ideomotor responses. So that is whereby you can tell them maybe one finger will move for yes, and one finger will move for no, one for maybe, and then you can communicate directly with the unconscious, subconscious mind and help facilitate change work. And that's without having to physically touch the client. Now, a mind reader or a mentalist, in England, there's a very famous gentleman named Derren Brown. In America, there's the amazing Kreskin, names that people have probably heard of. Both have used this technique, Hauschranism, also known as muscle reading. And it's essentially the motor responses. It's holding somebody's wrist and calibrating them by asking them something you know to be true, and you can feel what muscular reaction they give, and then asking them something that's not true, so you can feel the difference. And from knowing that, then you can, without them just thinking about things, you can tell whether or not it's right or wrong, for example. Or by moving them around a room, but telling them to think of where they hid the $10 bill in that room, you can then come back into the room, take hold of their wrist, tell them to remain quiet, but in their head think hot, hot, hot when you're getting closer to it, or colder, colder, colder when you're away. And there will be little muscular spasms, I'm going to say, or resistances when you are moving away from the note, or things that indicate to you it's becoming more likely that you are getting nearer. Very hard to describe in words like this, but that's what the book that Chuck just showed me. So it's cool to know that you've also played around with this stuff as well.
Yes, I have. And, you know, I would go to schools and do some weather speeches. And one time in Lubbock, it's a very conservative Christian town area. And I started psychically using some of the techniques with some of the kids, and I blew them away. And the teacher's like, oh no, he's the devil, right? Because he He knows, and I was just using scientific techniques that were taught to me in the books. I have more books down below. I have Kreskin's book behind me. I have Uri Geller's life signs that he signed, and he sent me crystals. And then Sheppy, his agent, one time said, Uri wants to talk to you. I talked to him on the phone about his techniques, and he kind of verbally gave me a wink wink when it came to the spoon bending.
Kind of does, doesn't he? I mean, he did a talk at the Blackpool Magicians Convention a couple of years ago, and prior to that, a talk at FISM, the International Magicians Convention. And indeed, that talk that he did, the video of it, along with the links to all your social medias and that, because it might interest people, I'll put a link below this as well to my tribute page to Uri. And on that page is embedded the video talk that he gave at Blackpool Magic Convention, where he says something to the audience like, now, you're all magicians and mentalists here in this audience. Now, we're all grown adults, okay? So let's not get caught up on how I make spoons bend. Let's talk about how you can become famous and successful. But the way he said it with a kind of cheeky wink was, and then later on when he made a spoon visibly melt on camera, he kind of, when it had snapped, just kind of went, wow, did you see that? And it's like that sort of, did you see how I did it? Implication, yet, you know, but he, you know, because he's never ever, he's always said that what he does is not magic. And yet, as I say on my tribute page, I was once with him in Birmingham, England, and I happened to be stood behind him. Could he let me stand behind him when he's doing this book signing in Waterstone's bookstore for the Uri Geller Mind Power Kit? And people were bringing cutlery and he was bending it. And then he was turning towards me and he said, Alex, did you see that? And the thing is, at that moment, all I'm going to say is that anyone stood in front of him would still be looking, as far as they were concerned, at a straight spoon or fork. And yet, from my angle, it appeared to already be bending. Make of that what you will.
Yeah. You know, he is well practiced in showmanship as well as his performance, which includes the bending of all kinds of things. And you got to admire that. And
he's without a doubt, whether he is genuinely making metal bend.
Yeah.
Watch the video if you're on the audio podcast, because I may be giving body language indications. But whether he's genuinely bending metal through the power of the mind, or it's all trickery, or a combination thereof, does it particularly matter? One thing that cannot be denied is if it is trickery and just magic, then he's probably the greatest magician who's ever lived, in so much as he's never revealed his secrets. He's never, whereas other magicians seem to want to. And in any event, you can't take away from him something we can all learn from as hypnotist and therapist, is he's without a doubt the greatest self-publicist on the planet.
Unbelievable. Really. He is. And his museum now, I see videos of that. It makes me want to fly and go see it. I mean, he's got amazing stuff there, and he's met people all over the world. He told me on the phone that he got an honorary citizenship to Mexico. And by the way, El Paso, Texas is the truest border city in the United States. So I turn to my left, I'm looking straight into the country of Mexico. And my wife is from Mexico. And, you know, it is a beautiful country. But he was invited by the president of Mexico at the time. And he has a story where he and it's Shippy
Shrang.
Shippy, his agent, had to hurriedly get out of Mexico because he went walking on the beach with the president of Mexico's wife late at night, and the president of Mexico wasn't too happy. But that was after he was given an honorary citizenship, which is tough to get in Mexico. So he told me that story, that he had to leave because there was a misunderstanding about the late night beach walk with the president's wife. Isn't that crazy?
It certainly is. It's interesting that all these little bits are in your background, though, as well, because there are those similarities to stuff that's happened in my past, as it were, as well.
Yeah, and you and I do not have an embarrassment bone in our body. And that's where I connected to you, because we're born performers. So my grandma, who my mom's mom, originally from Germany, and she was the only one to handle redheaded, ass-kicking Southern Ireland Irishman, right, to keep him in line. And he used to think her German strongness was funny, and he would roll off the couch laughing at his wife. But she would make me perform from an early age and sing in front of her and all her friends. So I got used to being in front of people, and I've given away cars in front of whole stadiums, 60,000 people on a microphone, which is the only difficult thing is the echo that comes back when you're on a mic in a stadium is just obnoxious. You can't listen to yourself. You just got to listen to the front part and not the speaker version of yourself. But I've done all that. But I got interested in you through online and watching videos. I reached out because I saw a special that you had on that Hypnotorous DVD, where there are some things that you still have in the hypnotic toolbox, which, by the way, anybody watching, it is the most valuable hypnosis training you'll get anywhere when you become part of Alex hypnosis training. And you keep updating all the time as well. I've got to renew that on Yes Course. And of course, you become part of the Facebook group as well. But I have learned, and I continue to rewatch a lot of stuff as well. Now I know all your background story, which I told you and Stuart Cassell's one time on one of your master classes.
For any viewers or listeners, Stuart Cassell's is also known as Harrison the Hypnotist. So you may have seen him on another episode of Hypnosis Week. Yeah,
and he also is the greatest tarot card reader in all of the United Kingdom. So there you go. Let's plug Stuart, right?
Tremendous. Now, there will be below, Chuck just mentioned the Elite Hypnotherapy and NLP Hypnosis Bootcamp. There will be a link below or above this video where you can grab yourself membership to that. Just so you realise, when Chuck says he needs to renew it, once you're a member for life. It's just that there's a yearly $1, which is about 70 pence United Kingdom sterling, $1 United States dollars. Reactivation fee every 12 months. So it's not like you're having to pay membership fee again. Many
it just pays the platform where all your videos are.
It's just basically it reactivates where everything is. But you can check that out. We won't dwell on that because there's so much to talk about. So the link will be above or below.
Yeah, I got interested in mentalism through watching original Darren Brown on YouTube, watching David Blaine. Chris Angel is the Vegas flashy rock and roll mentalist, and some of the others. And Kreskin is an original mentalist, right? It's the long form magic trick. Now, I'm a natural born klutz. I can rap. I've got genetically the white boy lack of dancing techniques, and I injure myself daily. But anyway, I digress. My magician skills are rudimentary. I had friends that were better, way better magicians than me, but I love the power of the mind. And so I dove into psychology, sociology, criminology. All the mafia kings of New York and Chicago were up in Canyon City, Colorado, up the road from my first university in Pueblo, Colorado, which while I was in criminology in university, I found out was the fifth largest Italian mafia city in the US.
All
And I'm
right.
like, and it's in the middle of nowhere, but all the relatives would live in the bigger city, Pueblo, and then go visit uncle, father, whatever, who was in prison for various offenses up the road. And then, by the way, I became a DJ in Canyon City, Colorado, at the Quality Inn Hotel. And there would be all the wives and girlfriends of all the prisoners. And I would put on mixed records at the time, go out and dance. And then I'd get on the mic and say, and in the audience, I'll buy you a beer if you go out and dance with some of these ladies, because I'd be wiped out tired. And of course, I couldn't dance anyway. But so that was my first degree. My second degree was in meteorology, a lot more difficult. You know, in broadcasting PR, you could study the night before. In a science, if you don't start studying 3 weeks before, you're probably not going to pass, right? So, but I made it through. I put a few, those of us who are creative, we can do math, we just get bored with it. So I put a few math tutors, I think, into the state mental hospital in Colorado because I was a difficult tutor student, but I made it through Calculus 3, Physics 3, statistics, and all the geeky courses. And I applied and drove all over the nation. And I would practice being a weatherman in front of my VCR, VHS tape. I would record the weather guy's graphics, and I would love when he was on a live shot because it was just the weather maps on my TV. And I practiced like I was in front of a camera every night. So I go to the TV stations and they're like, oh my God, Chuck, you're fantastic. What TV station do you work for right now? I'm like, I give the best forecast in the world out of my living room in Pueblo, Colorado. And they're like, we need somebody with experience. And it's the old adage, when you first get a job, how do you get experience if no one gives you a job, right? So my experience continued. I got hired in Lubbock, Texas for just weekends. I figured I could work at Chili's, waiting tables during the week to pay the bills, moved down there with my girlfriend. And the day I moved down there, the newsroom manager, the news director said, oh, Chuck, where are you? I'm like, I moved down here, rented a place. I'm ready to go this weekend to start training. And they're like, oh, well, today's my last day. I'm going to be a PR person for the local school district. So good luck. So I kept applying for jobs and all that. Now, getting back to all this, as one of my top passions, I went from psychology to studying mentalism to then I found out that all the mentalists, most of them were hypnotists, right? They had a background.
Yeah, at least a little bit of a background.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Right. And so, and then some of them were magicians, because what's one of the first things you do with a client in hypnosis? You grab their attention. Well, you want, in a magic trick, attention over here, not down here, right? So I learned all these things, and then I got super passionate about hypnosis. I went to used bookstores, bought a lot of books that you even have sold, I see online. I mean, you're like me in the way of buying everything hypnosis. And you and I can tell now that within a few pages whether or not the author really is has experience with hypnosis, right?
Well, yeah, without a doubt. What the thing with books is, Welsh, you're quite right. I read at least a couple of books a week, and I've done for years. My main motivation these days for doing so is just to continue proving the conclusion that I came to well over a decade ago, probably close to 2 decades ago, that basically there is absolutely nothing new under the sun in terms of how something actually works. It's just that sadly, most people come up with, say, a name or a brand or a technique, modality in hypnosis, and then they'll write a book on it and make out it's something new to try and entice people to go on an expensive course, then another course, then another course. They can get them into some kind of multi-level marketing scheme. Whereas if they actually told the truth of how and why it worked in the first place, you wouldn't need to keep going on course after course after course after course. And the truth is, there's nothing being taught, I don't teach anything particularly new. I've come up with new names and new marketing approaches and tweaked things. But in truth, anything I teach, or the people who taught me learned, or the people who taught them learned, you can find in books on mesmerism going back to like the 1800s if you dig deep enough.
Well, and your PDF of Delavar's book is gold because he was an originator. And you and I know the gypsies all train their kids on hypnosis, whatever they call it, at an early age, right? And
well, certainly, yeah, elements, psychological distraction techniques, certain things that people who want to flower things up will call verbal linguistics, the way of saying things in a manner to cause confusion and disorientation, or to make people think something is true that isn't, which collectively people might go, well, what's that got to do with hypnosis? But all of them are elements of changing people's belief systems, aren't
they? No, they really are. And that's where I love the therapy part of hypnosis. Now, the inductions are longer, but the longer the induction, the longer the client stays in hypnosis. And boy, I've been battling a little sinus virus for the last 18 days, and I still had to see clients because I had to pay the bills. And so one younger client came in, I knocked him out, and I went into a coughing fit. And I thought, oh my God, I woke him up. I went and, blew my nose, went and got a glass of water, everything, came back, he was still out. So, that is a compliment to your techniques as well. And the awakening coming from 1 to 5, number 4, it's like being washed with natural pure spring water. I use that every session. I use a lot of your lingo and techniques, and I have made some massive changes. But getting into hypnosis, the first person I learned it from was you. And then I tapped into Mike Mandel, who was on this hypnotic cast a couple years ago. He's up in Canada. He teaches hypnosis courses at the University of Toronto. And he's a good teacher, and he has some very interesting inductions that I have tried out. But once you have your go-to induction, you're comfortable, you're sending wavelengths to the client that make them more comfortable. And I kind of just use 1 or 2 different inductions. Now, you and I believe the same for street hypnosis. A lot of people are just so unsafe. It is scary. And a lot of those people don't have proper insurance or training. And I love the fact that you tell all your clients, all your students, to put the yellow gaffing tape within feet of the front of the stage, because how many singers could use that in bands that have fallen off the stage and really hurt themselves?
Well, that's the thing. It's not, there are, you know, with the greatest of respect to anyone in America, Canada, or certain other places in the world, in England, we have a thing called the 1952 Hypnotism Act that regulates demonstrations of hypnosis for public entertainment, whether that be on stage in a theatre, a nightclub, a bar, a drinking venue or whatever, a college or university, or whether it be on the street. You still need a license from the local authority, the local council authority here in England. Now, because that isn't the case in America, quite often online, you'll see in hypnosis forums, American hypnotists going, do this, do that, or they'll run courses. And because they don't know about this, they don't teach what the laws are elsewhere. And that is partly an element of why more and more people are appearing who are going out in England, Europe, and other places where there are relevant laws and doing stuff that, well, firstly, they're not licensed. So if they're in England and they haven't got the license, that will mean that they've invalidated any insurance cover that they may have had, because one of the conditions of any insurance policy is that you're abiding by all relevant statute laws of the area within which you're operating. And ultimately safety, the safety thing, people go, but hypnosis isn't dangerous. Well, hypnosis itself isn't as such, although it can, if you don't remove post-hypnotic suggestions, could have consequences. If you don't awaken somebody fully and they feel lethargic and they were already perhaps predisposed to being depressed or an anxious person or whatever, they could end up, that could be amplified. And there have been cases of that happen over the years. But a lot of it is just health and safety that, as you quite correctly say, Chuck, would be just as applicable to a band, a singer, a stand-up comedian, especially if they get volunteers on stage. A lot of it's common sense, but sadly, common sense isn't that common in this world.
No, and you've nailed it right there. You know, I watched a video. In the first 4 years of Japanese education, they teach manners, they teach respect, they teach walking across the crosswalks, and they teach the basics. So when they get to 5th grade, they're voracious learners. They want to learn, but also they have the basics of common sense instilled at a younger age. So yeah, you're right on with that. Now, I used to think, and I even mailed you a video of Michael Anthony, who's a stage hypnotist here.
Hey, Michael C. Anthony, Stage Hypnosis University. He may be a really nice guy. We've never met in person, but he is an incompetent, dangerous, negligent idiot. And the basis upon which I state that, and feel free to tag him in this video, people, but his videos that pop up on social media are visual evidence and proof of his negligence, incompetence, and lack of care, lack of duty of care, and lack of attention to health and safety, with people dropping on each other, falling off chairs, and a whole bunch of other things that, frankly, one day will lead to an accident where he gets sued. It's only a matter of a numbers game. But if he's lucky enough for that not to happen to him, doing those kinds of things, somebody will get injured. Even if it's only a minor injury, it will be such that maybe they don't sue him, fine, so he thinks that everything's fine. Well, no, it isn't. It's also not showing any respect.
And the thing is, the sad thing is, he is a top stage hypnotist, minus that, just the fact that he says, well, I tell them to fall softly and safely to the ground. Well, again, if you're telling somebody who doesn't have the common sense level or the comprehension level, they could fall hard to the ground.
But you can see it happen on the videos. His own
Yeah.
promotional videos for his own training courses are for anyone who engages common sense and actually cares about people's physical safety, let alone the potential psychological elements of being treated like incorrectly on set. To me, if you watch that video and buy his course, you yourself need shooting in the fucking head, because you're clearly blind yourself and will end up, if you think that what's on that video is an advert that should be followed, you want to aspire to that kind of thing, then you really shouldn't be doing any form of hypnosis on people.
Yeah, and I believe he's doing more adult shows now. He was actually trained by Mike Mandel up in Canada years and years ago. And Mike started off as a stage hypnotist.
Yeah.
And I noticed a recent Facebook post that I want to commend you with. The best clinical hypnotherapists started off on stage. Now, I started off on stage. I've done some public displays of hypnosis in a speaking format. So it's semi-stage hypnosis.
But you were prior to that doing stage stuff with the musicals. You had the performance, the stage movement, the stage presence, the projection of voice, pacing.
Oh, yeah.
All these little components. That's why I always say, if someone wants to become a better hypnotherapist or a better stage hypnotist, don't just study hypnosis, which if you're going to do that, look at the link above or below this video, join the bootcamp. You'll not get anything better anywhere else. But also, you know, go and do a few improvisation classes at a local drama school. I'm not saying you have to study for years. Do a few. If they do a 6-week course, say, an introductory course, do 6 weeks of that. It helps you get over your own embarrassment of suddenly doing something unexpected in front of a crowd of people, but it gets you used to thinking on your feet, so you can be delivering your hypnosis to your therapy client or your show, but you can see that things might not be going to plan. And at the same time, it teaches you that ability to be thinking how to change course on your feet. They're important skills, I think.
As they say over there, that's spot on, because I was live. They'd send me out to live shots for the weather. And they literally would give me 30 seconds to a minute to tell people watching where I was at and what was going on. Mm-hmm. And if it was a big festival or whatever, 30 to 60 seconds is not enough time. But anyway, I would bring the festival to me, because most of the time the cameraman, this is before cell phones and live streaming, and the live truck would be far away from the action. So I learned to bring the action to me. I learned to bring the performers to me. I learned things that have helped me be more aware of clients' reactions to hypnosis in therapy, more aware of whether or not I get them to stage 3 theta or delta stage and rapid eye movement in therapy, which I do a lot of the time. Now, does it take practice with the clients? They'll say, hey, can you fix me in one session? And I'm like, well, just like anything, we need to align your conscious mind, the troublemaker, the one that says, Chuck needs to grab that cigarette to be Chuck. Well, no, Chuck's a better Chuck by being a non-smoker, but our conscious mind, and I use this because of you, if it's 28 days, the phases of the moon, you develop a good or bad habit. It doesn't matter. And so because you've practiced that, your conscious mind thinks in order to keep Chuck safe, it's the bodyguard, the bouncer of our mind, it needs to keep us in the bad habits. Well, the first session, you align the conscious mind with the subconscious mind. So then when you plant suggestions that are positive, the conscious mind goes, oh, the new Chuck is a non-smoker, just for example purposes. So that is what I've learned But if I hadn't been on stage, if I hadn't done 25 years of TV, I would not be as an effective hypnotherapist. And, you know, I've created massive changes. And people say, Chuck, what do you do? I specialize in sleep and erasing anxiety and depression. And you and I know anxiety and depression, over drinking, obsessive compulsive, hoarding, they're all symptoms of our real problems. And most clients I've found over, as of last week, LinkedIn on Thursday reminded me I've been doing hypnosis for 19 years now. But we have two root causes usually of our trauma. And I disagree with most psychologies. Sometimes the trauma happens between birth and 7 years old. But for example, I had a Jamaican client who, at the age of 43, a nurse screamed at her and said, "Oh my God, your blood pressure is so high." Well, guess what? She created a negative trigger to the blood pressure cuff for that woman. And she came to me and she said, Chuck, the doctor wants to put me on all these blood pressure medications. I take them and I pass out because I don't need them. I only have high blood pressure when I see the blood pressure cuff. So in one session, we made her laugh at the blood pressure cuff and her former self by flipping the emotional attachment from negative, scared, and fear and false reality to laughing. We're producing more chemicals and a different representation for both the conscious and subconscious mind. She went to the doctor, it was up the road here, and I've had clients that want me to go to the dentist or doctor with them. And I couldn't, I had other clients, but I coached her over the phone. And she called me after the doctor visit and said, Chuck, you will not believe, the doctor says, did you change your diet? Are you exercising? What did you do? And she goes, no, man, I'd be seeing a hypnotist, you know. And after one session, she said that the doctor said, this is the lowest your blood pressure's been in 5 years. Wow. But so you can actually have a traumatic negative trigger installed anytime during your life. And so I might cough. It chokes me up just getting emotional about this. But I have other clients. One client that has renewed three-month sessions with me, hired me for her 2 daughters, hired me for her sister. She is the highest paying client ever. But guess what? In 11 months of working with me, she went, her and her husband, from averaging $2 million a year in their fence company to last year, she says, because of my opening of creativity and my suggestions, hypnotically and business-wise for her, she made an extra $1.3 million. Now, her daughter was not going to graduate from college, thought she was going to live in her mom's basement for the rest of her life and all this. She was getting D's and F's in university. And so after just 3 sessions, we took her from D's and F's to A+ and extra credit. And last December, she walked the stage at Georgia State University. And by the way, these clients have given me permission to share the stories. And Raquel, the mom who originally hired me, also had a tenant in a warehouse who decided, since she was a woman, he didn't need to listen to her, and then decided he didn't need to pay rent for the warehouse. I got the state of Georgia involved. We got him out of the warehouse. And she said, you know what? I've always wanted to do an events center, a party hall. And I said, well, let's do it. So we found out what she needed. And this past December, she said, Chuck, I made 10 times my investment money in remodeling that warehouse in just the 1 month of December. Then she had another warehouse full of coffee beans that were grown in the Amazon next to tangerine trees. The coffee has a beautiful, fruity tangerine aftertaste. But because she's a woman, my clients call me Chuck GPT, but I go to the Google version, Gemini, and I ask Gemini, which is a lot quicker than asking Google, Gemini, what's the average roasting cost per bag for coffee? And I said, she was going to buy a $160,000 Italian coffee roaster and machine and all this stuff. I said, no, you white label it with a roaster. We found roasters in Georgia. The roaster was so impressed with the quality of bean that now she's a Colombian coffee importer into the US. And rewinding back to the fence company, I said, have you ever called the big box hardware stores like Home Depot or Lowe's? She goes, no. So I got her in touch with the closest Lowe's. They said, oh my gosh, we're looking for a great fence builder to build fences for Lowe's. We'll pay 100% of the materials, the travel costs of your workers, all the salaries of your workers, and the federal taxes. All you have to do is make sure they show up on time and build a professional fence. Now, over the past year, she went from one Lowe's. She's now building fences for 29 Lowe's around the state of Georgia. And this is all by, see, you and I as hypnotists, we guide people into the right file rooms in their head. And then we show them where the file folders are, where all the answers are. Because every one of us has the answers to solving our problems. They just need a guide like Alex and myself to guide you where the answers are. Our hypothalamus in our brain, when we get enough sleep and have appropriate diet and our immune system is good, our hypothalamus produces every chemical we ever need and the map for the white blood cells and our antibodies to fight any disease that we'll ever need. It's all up here. The pharmaceutical companies know that. They also know the famous placebo effect that they base. You know, I love these we have drug commercials. Only New Zealand and the US are allowed to do pharmaceutical drug commercials. But at the end, they have disclaimers. And they go, for Humira will clear your skin of, skin psoriasis, okay? Wasn't even developed for that, but now it's modified into that. But at the end of the commercial, they'll say, this drug may make your left arm fall off, you may break out in purple spots, or you may die, right? And so my dad brought me up on a British sense of humor, very dry, right? And my dad's family's from the Olive Guernsey in the English Channel Isles. And my grandma and my grandpa, my dad, just have me rolling because I have that dry British sense of humor. I grew up on Benny Hill and Monty Python and all
For
that.
those that don't know those names, just go on YouTube and search Benny Hill or Monty Python, but particularly Benny Hill. But I think safest way to say is do not watch Easily Offended. But it's not that it's obscene or anything. It's just what they these days would call not politically correct.
Yes, but now there's a trend, thanks to Joe Rogan and the mothership, of doing the old school, not worrying about political correctness humor, which I support as well. But anyway, in this commercials that I watch on the drug companies, when they say all these things that the drugs may do. You know, the depression drugs actually may cause suicidal thoughts.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea. No?
Yeah, but anyway, I picture my friends at my funeral. Here's the British sense of humor, looking at me at an open casket saying, "Oh, it is so sad that Chuck passed away, but his skin has never looked clear." You know? And
Excellent.
so, now getting into that, I had a young kid 2 weeks ago who scheduled a psychiatrist visit the day before his first hypnosis session. And he went there, and the psychiatrist goes, "Oh, before you leave, here's your goodie bag with not one, but 6 psycho medications in the bag."
6?
6. And I'm like, number one, they did a blind test of physicians in the United States last year, and 60% of them failed the chemistry, bad drug interaction part of the test, right? But anyway, I digress. But I'm like, you and I would agree on this, I know, but anxiety and depression, which by the way are married. And my favorite mental health quote is from Lao Tzu, famous Chinese general and philosopher. Those who live in the past are depressed. Those who live in the future are anxious. Those who are at peace live in the present. And I tell everyone, hypnosis makes you appreciate and live in the present, and then more aware of living in the present. And that's one of our benefits.
I definitely could not agree more. There's two, means the same thing, but there's two different sort of rhymes, parables, call them what you will, that I use that mean the same thing. One is the yesterday's history, tomorrow's the future, a mystery, today is the greatest gift of all. That's why it's called the present.
Yeah.
Same way of saying live in the moment. Or a monetary sort of metaphor is that yesterday is a cancelled check, tomorrow's just a promissory note, whereas today is cash. So spend it wisely.
Exactly. And I say anxiety is the what if disease. What if a truck comes barreling through the front of my house right now? Well, what if your friend signed you up for a contest and didn't tell you, and you get a $25,000 check in the mail today? If we can use the what if negative part of our brain, I'm just wondering, can we not use it to produce positive false reality outcomes just as easily? Because our mind doesn't know the difference between fantasy and reality. That's why there's so many video virtual reality gamers that will have actual heart attacks playing video games because they think the zombie is real chasing them, or they think someone's shooting at them, because our mind doesn't know the difference between fantasy and reality. A policeman told me once that we'll have as many as 5 witnesses to an accident, a hit and run accident, and there'll be as many as 5 different colors of the vehicle that took off after the accident. And I read that there's a study here lately that says 50% of our depression movies we play, 50% of them are lies, are memories of our past, because our subconscious mind fills in the gaps, right? So anyway,
well, the research shows that any memory, and I use the speech marks in the air, every time you recall it, it's actually being reconstructed. So it's being distorted, influenced, changed, or embellished, or diminished, or a combination thereof every time. So there is very little reality in it whatsoever anyway. And the weight of evidence shows that to be true, which then begs the question, well, if the weight of evidence shows scientifically that memories are reconstructed, distorted, and that's why they can't be relied upon, you know, hypnosis regression cannot, certainly not in England and most places, it's not relied upon or trusted as evidence in legal cases because it's a false memory syndrome and the fact it's distorted. But when you realize that things are not reality, then you can get to a point where you don't trust in them and don't believe them, which can be both positive and negative, because you can either end up doubting yourself, imposter syndrome, and not looking at the truth of what you have achieved in the past, for example. But by the same token, you can take it as a positive springboard, can't you? By way of going, well, if everything's distorted, then perhaps things weren't as bad as I thought. And it doesn't have to remain that way, because that isn't actually totally reality of how it was in the past anyway. So create your own, believe in that moment, as you just said before. Look for the best.
Anxiety and depression go together. So when psychotherapists, and I agree with you, you're the first person that said a lot of them should be put in jail because they make you relive your trauma every time you see them. I do it the first and only first session. I do it through a visualization exercise, and they don't even have to tell me about their trauma. Then we never visit it again. But there's a method to modern day psychotherapy. It's to keep you in your trauma so you keep coming back, so the psychiatrist, psychologist can keep getting that insurance money, right?
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad. It's about them making money. And, you know, I always say, and obviously people have got to find, if they're doing this as a business for themselves, what works for them morally, ethically, with their lifestyle and a whole host of other things. But too many hypnotherapists out there are charging like $100 for a session, and they're working every hour that God sends, assuming they can attract enough clients just to live a fairly normalish lifestyle. And I've always believed it better to charge far more than average, or be at the top end, so that the client's going to make more of a commitment to the therapy anyway. But in actual fact, it isn't dearer for them, because doing it the way where my sole aim, and I know yours is the same, is to get rid of them as a client as soon as possible. For each issue, you might have to someone then come back to you for something else, as you mentioned with the lady you've been helping coaching and business-wise, that's different. But, you know, you stop them smoking, months later, they might come back and go, you know what, I've decided to get over my fear of flying or something. But your aim is to help them achieve what they want to achieve in the shortest number of sessions possible. So although it might cost more per session, considerably more than the psychotherapist or counsellor, the truth is, because they're going to see you for far less time, it ultimately becomes far cheaper for them.
Well, I make them pay for multiple sessions up front, because I tell them, if you have more skin in the game, if you are more committed financially, you're going to pay attention to what I say. You're going to do the homework. And by the way, I went to a studio with the man who was the youngest DJ in US history at the biggest station at WABC in New York, Mike McKay. And he is retired here in El Paso, but he's got a home studio. But I recorded your complete mind therapy along with anxiety and depression erasing and sleep enhancing for one audio. Then I used the same recording of complete mind therapy, but then I interject in spots weight loss. And then I have a smoking. But again, you, as part of the NLP and hypnosis training toolbox, you get the permissions to do all that in your training, but I give them that recording. And I use your technique. If they say, hey, I still have this anxiety attack every once in a while, I'm not sure. And I've only had a couple people say, one lady said, you helped me find the man of my dreams and get divorced from my ex-husband, but I would like my money back. And I'm like, well, And I help each client go and erase, reduce, or boost 3 things each session. And when we take care of one, they can replace it with another. But that way, subconsciously, I believe in the Robert Cialdini. He's brilliant psychologist and a hypnotist in marketing. His 6 steps, now there's 7, to sales, psychological sales. And one is the rule of reciprocity, of giving. And I believe in each session, I give a recorded session, even if you're a 1-session client, I give the recording. I give a sleep enhancer and anxiety reducing supplement link, complete with my wife, she is a profiler. She's got a master's in semiology and linguistics, brilliant. She can tell you about a person within 30 seconds of seeing them. Unbelievable. She watches footage of offices in one of her jobs, and she says, oh, that manager's stealing from the company. Those 2 people are secretly sleeping together and all this stuff. And she says some amazing things. And I'm like, oh, that's not true. 100%, Alex. Every time on down the road, I find out. I told her I'm going to make a poster. Rosario, ... you were right, ... again.
Excellent.
But anyway, I've learned about all these things. I've also learned from you that, hey, did you listen to the recording as you were going to sleep every night for 28 nights in a row? Well, no, I missed a few nights. Well, you didn't do what I instructed you to do, right? And that is a plus. But I've only had a couple people, and I ended up the lady who found love, another rich guy. I'm not going to say she was a gold digger, but she gave the remaining sessions to her niece, and we just negotiated it. And her niece, I hypnotized her in 1 session, and she got 2 rotting wisdom teeth out of her mouth. And now, as you mentioned, her next accomplishment is she wants to be not afraid to fly. So we're going to do that. But the things I've learned, the psychology over 19 years, and the training from you, I've been wanting to share this for a very long time. But I'll tell you one thing about the drug company. And you see how I do hypnotic loops? I loop back to the subjects. But with depression, I learned this from Gary Brecka, who is all over social media now. But he said, depression is low serotonin, right? Would you agree? That's one of the chemicals that are low.
The serotonin approach to depression has been totally debunked in recent years as being complete and utter bullshit, just used to get drugs prescribed and make money for.
Yeah, exactly. And he said they prescribe SSRI, serotonin receptor inhibitors. So even if it was involved, as much as they'd like to tell us, there's a cap put by those drugs on how much happy chemicals you can produce. So it'll keep you just happy enough to not have suicidal thoughts, but it won't make you happy enough to stop therapy.
It's nonsense. The book that I advise people to read is called The Emperor's New Drugs by Dr. Irving Kirsch, Kirsch. He also has work hypno-related. But Dr. Irving Kirsch's book, The Emperor's New Drugs, it's a meta-analysis of all years worth of different studies into antidepressant drugs and the studies that they do before they get to market, namely where they're compared against placebos. And the meta-analysis ultimately concluded, you need to read the book, but the bottom line is it concluded that whilst most of those studies concluded the drugs were either were more effective than placebo. That when it got to meta-analysis level and actually looking at the bigger data, because there's rules about what they do or don't have to publish and all this nonsense, that when it got down to brass tacks, the vast majority of these drugs, if not all, had no more effect or affect on people than the placebo effect, a sugar pill. And indeed, the vast majority of them, when it got down to brass tacks, were not as effective as the placebo effect. They were just profit-producing chemical recipes that can be copyrighted and patented to sell at a profit, whereas making people aware that you can reprogram your personal laptop computer, you can't really monetize in that manner for a big multinational company.
No. And did you know my friend Dan Cook, who graduated from Colorado University Medical School, said 60% of his fellow doctor graduates graduated with a D average, below normal. So these are practicing doctors. And my mom always said the reason they say practicing, because they still haven't got it right yet. But did you know that my friend Dan Cook was an actor? And that's how I knew him. He was a fellow tour guide at Coors. But he said, we had to take an acting class in medical school in the United States because of what we know as hypnotists. We want to represent the image the patient has, and we want to have the curing effect as we walk into the examination room. So that includes the white jacket, the stethoscope. You'll never see, you know, doctors sometimes will wear their stethoscopes to lunch, right? It's part of their props, part of their costume.
To create the perception and trigger the belief syndrome, the placebo.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they have learned this. And then I love, I quote the Neil Peart version of the band Rush of Shakespeare, but all the world is indeed a stage, and we are merely players, performers and portrayers, each another's audience inside the gilded cage. But that is so true in all professions, right? But especially in the medical. And then knowing the placebo effect, now they have all these happy drug names like Sky Rizzy and all these super happy positive names. And again, that adds to the placebo effect.
It's a suggestion.
The power of suggestion. So now, Rosario used to work with clergy and politicians, and she said she stopped doing it and showing how to do their hands, how to use words to control the minds of the masses, because she said both of them a lot of times had nefarious intentions, right?
Yeah.
But I've had actual clergy come to me to help them hypnotically get their Sunday sermon out better to the masses. Now, if they had some sort of nefarious intentions, which, by the way, you know that churches stimulate all or most of the five senses in the first, they've done research now, 22 minutes of a service. You go in, and first, the church is beautiful, stained glass, statues, visual sense, right? Then most churches burn incense, the sense of olfactory, sense of smell is the highway to the brain, right? Then they stimulate gustatory in communion with the wafer and the wine. And then they auditory, choirs and the organ. And then finally, they tell you to shake your neighbor's hand or hug your neighbor in church, and they're stimulating kinesthetic. They know 22 minutes into a service now. I know the local Catholic churches, and I believe in whatever religion you believe in, I support, and I'm like my wife says, she's a theologian, but that 22 minutes now, the Catholic churches around here, that's the first time they pass the offertory plate, because they know you're more likely to give more money to the church, because you're from beta to alpha, the first level of hypnosis. And Ed in the back of the pews, who's snoring away, might be tired, but he also may be hypnotized by the sermon, right? Anyway, those are my own thoughts. I've always wanted to present those views.
I could not agree more. Indeed, I say much the same. In my mind control documentary, Extreme Danger, Extreme Hypnosis, which anyone can watch for free on my Celebrity Hypnotist YouTube channel. So yeah, we're on the same hymn sheet, so to speak.
Yeah, and again, but it all comes down to helping people. And I am my weathercast every night. If you need more love, joy, happiness, money, give out what you need more of to somebody who needs it more than you. And the universe, God, Buddha, whatever you believe, will pay you back some 80-fold. It won't be right away or in the same way, but you'll get paid back. Or if you have an excess of love, joy, happiness, money, or even knowledge, teach somebody something, and the universe will teach you something you need to know. So that's what I am my weathercast with. And I believe in helping people. And with hypnosis, despite what, going back to religions, the Baptists especially, who all they do is preach negativity, because I've been in many services, grew up in Baptist, a vacation Bible school. All they tell you every 5 minutes is you're going to hell, right? And but here's the thing. They say that hypnosis is evil. Well, now people are finding out that using your subconscious mind can manifest abundance into your life, can instantly change your emotional attachment to anxiety and depression, and therefore change your life. And hypnosis is positive, and there's really nothing. Now, can it be used for nefarious things? You have proven that in your mind control documentary and a lot of the things I've learned from you. But that's brainwashing. That's the cult level, or the intelligence services of the world level of mind control, right?
Yeah, but sadly it surrounds us all from cradle to the grave. Well, I'm not going to dwell on that, because people can go and search that out and have a look at their own time. What stuck in my head then, or rather jumped into my head, was this parallel between therapy and being a weatherman, or more so between therapy and the weather. Because if we think of, I'll posture this as it were, and then see what your thoughts are. But if we think of the weather is something that's external to us as human beings, and yet people's reactions to it can totally change their mood, the course of their day. If it starts raining, they can become negative and feel down. You know, there's even a psychiatric disorder called seasonal affective disorder, according to DSM, which is a work of fiction anyway. But according to DSM, seasonal affective disorder, and people can have lamps to, you know, in their house to apparently simulate natural sunlight to make them feel better. And it probably will. If that's what they believe it will, then it likely will, because of placebo. But given that weather is something that's external to us, what happens, but people have an internal reaction that can then affect what they manifest outwards. What other kind of similarities what I'm saying there is in my head, and I can't find the words to say it, but
Yeah.
is that I think that you having moved into therapy, there are things from the weather and your meteorology background and observation of people's reactions to such that will have proved invaluable to you in the work you're doing now.
Oh, it really is. And originally, I was in discussion of what I should call my local business with Stuart Cassell's, and he tapped your knowledge and said, "Hey, what do you think of this name?" I went with it, and it still exists. You look it up, Lightning Hypnosis, change in a flash. I came up with that saying. But really, hypnosis, I read a study that the average time for a breakthrough with traditional psychotherapy is 3 to 5 years. And in hypnosis, it's just a few hours, or maybe even an hour and 20 minutes in one session. And that's what business people, everybody wants. They want changes made yesterday. They want it right now. And so I thought, gee, that's a parallel. Now with weather, there's also a weather phobia. Did you know that?
I mean, I have in the past I've encountered people who've been, well, they would say phobic of lightning and stuff.
Yeah.
Albeit that it manifests more. That tended to be someone who, when it got down to it, it bothered them most when they were flying because it happened once and there was turbulence, and they weren't actually, when it turned out, phobic of lightning. It was just one of the things they verbalized as being their way of consciously comprehending it, as often can be the case. But if it exists in the world, there's going to be people somewhere that are scared of it, I guess.
Oh, yeah. And I had a lady the other day who flew into El Paso. We have a mountain that divides our city in half. Unofficially, it's the end of the Rocky Mountains that come all the way from Canada, all to the southern border. But meteorologically, when we have a west wind like yesterday, the wind gusts and sustained winds are stronger on the east side of the mountains. Now, I could get into talking about the conservation of angular momentum and potential vorticity. I already dropped you into the first hypnotic sleep state just by saying that sentence. But if I say metaphorically, it's like a ball on top of the mountain. You push the ball, it goes down the eastern slopes. What happens to the speed of that ball?
Starts to get faster as it builds up momentum.
Again, chokes me up. Here's the thing. Same sort of physics are involved with that ball rolling down the mountains. The speed of the ball increases the speed of the wind, or it's the roller coaster effect. Now, with hypnosis, I use metaphors all the time. You know, it's kind of like you got lost and you saw a beautiful plant. We were hiking, you saw a beautiful tree, you walked off the trail, and then all of a sudden you see a rattlesnake, you see a cactus. You can tell I live in the desert. And I guide you around the obstacles to get you back on the healthy mental health path. That's what a hypnotist is. Now, with weather, it's all how we perceive it. Did you know that negative ions are produced by rainfall, and it actually makes us feel better? So all the sad songs about crying in the rain scientifically aren't true, right? But it's the perception of it's raining, it's depressing, it's sad. It's all how we represent the rain. But if I tell somebody to write 10 positive things about the rainfall, it helps plants grow. The plants help clean the carbon dioxide out of the air and produce oxygen. It helps clean out the pollution out of our atmosphere. It actually helps everything look better. It cleans our streets more than our local city governments do, right? So all these positives that people, so it's how we look at the weather and the types of weather. It's how we look at our symptoms in our life. And that's how we internalize things. And if we look at life negatively, whatever we focus on expands. So we're going to have more negativity in our life.
You mentioned negative ions, so it just triggered something. So I'm just pick my phone up so that
Sure.
I can quote the name of this person. Correctly, because there's a doctor, we got a Japanese author rather, Masaru Emoto, first name Masaru, second name Emoto. I think it's Masaru Emoto. He was, sadly, he's no longer around apparently. He was a Japanese businessman, author, and they're saying pseudo-scientist, but I actually believe there's something in what he said, who claimed that human consciousness could affect the molecular structure of water. His 2004 book, The Hidden Messages in Water, was a New York Times bestseller. And if you search for his experiments on YouTube, you see that one of his alleged experiments, well, I say alleged, they did it, was that they took water from the exact same source and put it into two different containers, but exactly made the same way, same size. So everything's the same water, same size containers, same amount of water in the containers, closed exactly the same, kept in exactly the same environment in terms of in the same room, at the same temperature, for the same length of time. But one of them, before it was put next to the other in that room, would have been taken off to the side and shouted at and told it was negative and whatnot. And the other one was given loving comments and positive things and whatnot. And they were both banged in the freezer. And the molecular, when they were brought out, it was visually, go and search for it, see the videos. I can't verbally do justice to this. But the fact is, you looked and they'd stuck stickers on so you knew which one was nasty intent had been projected towards and which had the loving positive intent. And the one that had been given the positive loving intent was as clear could be for normal water that freezes. Whereas the one that had negative intent was all, well, much darker, and the way it had frozen, it just looked more, I'm going to say, ugly. You need to go and have a look at it. Now, whatever you make of that, whether it's some sort of pseudoscience or trick that he did, to me, it kind of makes a bit of sense in so much as everything is energy, everything's vibrations. If somebody shouts at you, it can put you back up. Whereas if a hypnotherapist tells you to be calm and relaxed and breathe deeply in and out, that calming soothingness can help you relax. And the fact that the human body is largely made up of water, well, if we're largely made up of water and calming vibrational voice tones or musical tones can help us relax, whereas extreme and shouting and negativity can get us stressed, anxious and whatnot, is that really any different to his experiment? In which case, the flip side of that is perhaps what you were saying about the ions in water.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I believe in quantum physics. I'm a scientist. I'm a meteorologist. And it can be proven with wavelengths, and women, and Gary Brackus said this too, and I looked it up. He couldn't believe, he was researching and found out that women have more brain cells than men. Did you know that?
Yeah.
And then he wanted to disprove it so much, he researched more and found out that women use more gray matter of their brain. They use more of their brain than men, right? But if you think about this, your mom knew you were going to make a bad move before you even made it. Moms are psychic. And some people say it's the pineal gland in our brain or whatever. But women can really tune into this. So when we're first dating and we see a girl we like, what happens to the guy's vibrations? It's all over the place, right? But women, no matter how nervous they are, they have a smooth wavelength that they send out. So I tell all my younger men, especially, there was an old saying in hip hop here in the US, man, you got to slow your roll, right? Your hyperness. And I use it with quantum physics. You got to slow your roll because you got to match the vibration. And when people say opposites attract, it really is BS, because you got to be like someone in some way for them to like you, right? And we do that in hypnosis. We match their wavelength and then guide them down to a calm, relaxed wavelength in a way that's right for them, right? In a calm, safe, secure. See, I can recite all the Alex William Smith sayings in hypnosis, and I do daily. So again, it's a science, and doctors are starting to understand this. I have doctors that come see me because I label myself a hypnotist and not as much as a hypnotherapist. None of my records can be legally subpoenaed in the US. Did you know that the American Medical Association, which, by the way, was started by an angry John D. Rockefeller, you can look up, but he got mad because he bought all the oil companies and had a monopoly, and then the United States made him break up the monopoly. So now they put petroleum-based byproducts in all the pharmaceuticals, right? And then they give money to the medical schools around the world, or around the nation for sure, to help have them teach medicine in a certain way. I won't go down that rabbit hole, but that's just the surface. But John D. Rockefeller had the AMA say that if any doctor gets any mental health therapy in some specialties, the AMA in the US can yank their license. Can you believe that? Well, doctors are humans too. They go through the same mental challenges that you and I go through. So I have doctors that see me on the down low for business hypnosis, wink, wink. But there you go. Or I have owners of behavioral health clinics that have seen me. I had a doctorate of psychology that teaches psychiatrists and psychologists at the master's and doctorate level at a major university in the US see me over Zoom. She paid for 10 sessions. She said, Chuck, you solved my anxiety issue. You had me laughing at my anxiety after the first session. And when I saw the woman that caused my anxiety, I have to sit down because I'm laughing so hard and crying happily. But she said, I knew the techniques that I teach in university are going to take years, and I needed this anxiety solved right now. And so I found a competent hypnotherapist. Now, I have like 29 5-star reviews. Some people say, hey, you need to mix in a few 3 and 4-star reviews. Well, no, they're all real clients that give me 5-star reviews. and you can tell by reading them, you know, an occasional misspell or whatever, but they're honest, real people reviews. But that was one of the biggest honors I found, that, you know, I had a doctorate of psychology come see me to fix her symptom. And her symptom was caused by a root cause. And we got to that root cause, the first one, in the first session. So I call them aha moments. And now I know this is crazy, but I give unlimited positive texts. They only have to be positive, of aha moments that happen in between the sessions of my clients. And I give one additional phone call to tell me about their positive wins per session. And about 20% of my clients take me up on my positive phone call. And all of them will text me positive wins. Like, oh my God. You know, I have one client, I'll do two more testimonials real quick. One client,
No, hey, there's money as you want there, but for, you know, for people who are starting out, there's actually nuggets in here about relevant to how to help people get the results they want. So this is cool.
Yeah. This one lady came to me. She had anxiety and depression. She was sleeping 2-3 hours a night, which adds to our anxiety and depression. You and I know that when we don't get adequate enough sleep, quality sleep, little things in our lives can set us off, right? Can frustrate us. Did you know alcohol, unfortunately, marijuana, and sleeping pills are all sedatives, and they'll knock us out, but they'll only drop us to stage 3 of sleep. The neurologists and sleep doctors are so creative. Stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. But they don't allow us to go into stage 4, the most reparative and restorative stage of sleep. So she was not even going to theta, stage 3, because she was bringing her problems to bed. And I read that in a horoscope one time, that Capricorns, like myself, my birthday's January 17th, bring their problems to bed. And when I got older and I started dating, I found out that was both literal and figuratively there, and bringing your problems to bed. And by the way, you and I would, in our party days, we would have ended up in jail in the UK with our party, but we would have had a great time. But I've been down that road as well.
Yeah, seems like a long time ago.
Yeah, and a different person, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And our priorities. But this lady, getting back to the lady, one session, we doubled the quality of her sleep, erased her anxiety, and she wrote me on Facebook Messenger 4 days later, and she goes, Chuck, this is insane. I never told you one of the 3 things we wanted to work on, none of them were about weight loss. And I've been to 6 weight loss doctors. I didn't want to do gastric bypass. I didn't want to do Ozempic, which, by the way, dries out your muscles. What is the biggest muscle in your body? The heart. I won't go down that road, but I have one client still on it. But she goes, I didn't want to do that. But 4 days after our first session, I've lost 8 pounds. A week later, she lost 11. And 7 weeks later, into our 10 session package, she only did 7 because we had cured everything in 7 sessions. She had lost 30 pounds. Her fiance lives on the East Coast. She became such a hottie. He wants to now move to the West Coast to be close to her. She got the self-confidence and self-image was boosted, right? That she, I don't advise this, gave 2 weeks notice to her job without any job to go to. And she redid her resume, went on LinkedIn, applied to 15 jobs. She got 5 job interviews the next week, which is unheard of. She interviewed with the law firm she ultimately got hired with on the East Coast, and they said, hey, you can work 98% of the year from home doing legal data analytics for double the salary she made in her first job.
Wow.
So those are the changes. And I'll do one more testimonial because it tells this is part of the business hypnosis. One lady, she's a medical contractor. She lines up attorneys and accident victims with neurologists and back surgeons, right? And then she gets paid commissions once the surgeries are complete and everything. She had procrastination challenges, which most of us have. She had anxiety and depression. She had low self-confidence. First session, we pointed out all the positives in her subconscious mind and her conscious mind about her life and her confidence level. Her motivation and self-confidence was boosted so much. The next day, she went to the top law firms in her city, and she made $140,000 in commissions, $70,000 for her head nurse partner, and $70,000 for herself the day after the first session.
Wow. That's definitely instant manifestation of a different perception and state of mind.
And after the third session, she made another $140,000, and she said, Chuck, can I put you on retainer for life? You know, and she paid for 10 sessions. She's only done 4. But she says, you have motivated me so much, I don't have time. Now she drives
Excellent.
4 hours between cities to do work in 2 cities. But there you go. Now,
well, I mean, amazing results. And there is, I mean, we both know, and a lot of people, viewers and listeners, will already know, a lot of people starting out may not yet have realized that whether it's in that business arena, helping people achieve their goals, dreams, ambitions, and desires, or whether it's in a more helping them overcome a habit, addiction, fear, or phobia, the underlying what we do as therapists to help them, it is pretty much the same thing, helping them reprogram that personal laptop computer, the programs they're running.
and in business, if you're sending off low vibrations, are you going to make that sale? Are you going to make that new client? No. But in hypnosis, as I learned from you, and I keep in a little book I carry everywhere, everyone needs to be loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, and valued.
Yeah.
Right? And when people tell me, oh, Chuck, I can't be hypnotized, I say, and I want you to use this, do you ever daydream? And they're like, well, yeah, 80% of the day. I'm like, you were hypnotized. You were in your subconscious mind. So in hypnosis, we use that. Now, for safety purposes, I go above and beyond. Did you know, once I awaken them, I make sure they're awakened here. And guess what I do? I walk them outside my home office here in West El Paso, Texas, and I walk them to their car to make sure that they're 100%. And then I tell them, you're 100% back to normal, giving a suggestion, final suggestion. Yeah. So just in case they were to get in a car accident on the way home or anything, they couldn't say, well, I was still hypnotized. Well, no. But now the Insurance Institute of America says when you're under highway hypnosis, when you drive home and you look up and say, I don't even remember the trip home, you're a safer driver now because you're not on this. You're not on the cell phone. You're not like the lady I saw at the stoplight the other day, Alex, gluing her eyelashes on at the stoplight. I'm like, girl, number one, you're going to glue your eyes shut or you're going to poke your eye out, right? But
well, as we said earlier, common sense is not that common.
no, but here's the thing. The Insurance Institute has done studies, and believe me, they do studies on top of studies. You're still going to swerve. You're still going to jam on the brakes. You're just in the driving zone. You're in the alpha first level brainwave of hypnosis, but you're actually now, because of new modern distractions, a safer driver.
Yeah, because it's tied in with the I'm going to say condition response, the learned behaviors, the state dependent memory and learned behavior of driving, as opposed to the different state of mind and body you tend to get in when you start messing with electronic devices, where it triggers off feel good feelings if somebody's like your post, or it makes you feel angry if somebody's not like your post.
And that's why governments of the world want to control social media platforms, because they no longer, what was it, Goebbels, of this small short guy with a little mustache?
The warm-up, well, Goebbels was the warm-up act for Hitler.
Yeah, but who said that if you control the media, you control the minds of the masses, right?
Could have been it. I mean, numerous people have said such.
But originally, the famous one, I believe, was either Goebbels or Hitler. But I saw it firsthand. I was on the media every day for 25 years. And I saw national news stories that weren't changed by the lazy producers at my local TV station. So the message went out the same at every TV station in the nation, right? So advertising is a mind control. Mentalism, look at Darren Brown's advertising example of his special where he had the bear, but he set that up for weeks, had a little sandwich board outside a sandwich shop there in London with a bear and the specials of the day.
Wow.
He exposed those ad execs to all kinds of things.
I hate to break the spell, but no, he didn't.
Oh, okay.
That some of my that's what it looks like if you go on YouTube and search sort of Darren Brown advertising executives, or Darren Brown creature comforts or creature heaven or something. But one of those search terms will bring up the video. That's what it looks like you subliminally influenced them. However, that's not how it was achieved. It was a far more reliable mentalism method without giving anything away, as it were.
Up the tricks, yeah.
Quite often things that Darren does that looks like the hypnosis aren't. And I mean, in the past couple of years, he's actually done more and more in his live shows that is out and out hypnosis, making people forget the name, lock their hands together, blah, blah, blah. But the bulk of his work for years, especially TV, a lot of the stuff that looked like it was hypnosis was actually not. And some of the stuff that looked like it wasn't actually was. And then there was stuff in between where the lines were blurred.
Yeah, and I understand that. You and I understand that. And now it's not as much as some famous Las Vegas hypnotist would actually have, like David Copperfield has, some partners in crime, we'll put it there in their tricks.
Oh, no, yeah. No, Darren doesn't use stooges or anything like that. No, definitely not. I mean, anyone who is interested in the Darren Brown type mind reading, mind controlling, mentalism stuff, all of that is also covered in the Elite Hypnotherapy and NLP Hypnosis Bootcamp, the link to which will be below or above this video. Yeah. Now,
I do want to bring up some American hypnotists and others.
Please do.
And Tom Silver, who I know is a friend of yours in the show, is brilliant.
Tom is not only is he one of the nice guys, but he's well, he's another example of what we spoke about before. More often than not, this doesn't always apply, obviously not, but more often than not, the best therapists have some sort of performance or stage hypnosis background. Tom Silver, stage hypnotist, but also pioneering hypnotherapy. Orman McGill, stage hypnotist and magician, but major name in hypnotherapy. Gil Boyne, the cowboy hypnotist, started off as a musical stage, variety stage hypnotist, but then transforming therapy and all his other, therapy approaches. Dave Allman was a stage hypnotist, and yet Allman hypnotherapy is massively, praised.
The techniques are brilliant.
Paul McKenna started out as a stage hypnotist. Now he's pretty much one of the world's best-selling self-hypnosis and hypnotherapy authors.
And he's learned a few techniques from you in the past as well, but he was on radio starting off. He was a radio DJ.
It's not so much, he didn't so much learn stuff off me, but all of his staff who worked at a company he had called McKenna Breen came on the courses that are inside the Bootcamp when it was the Mindcare organisation. And on their forms where it said, how did you hear about this? The people who were working in his office and the seminar facilitator said it was recommended to them by Paul. And those exact courses were in the Bootcamp that Chuck told you about before. So yeah, please mention the American Hypnotist, because there's some really good ones.
Anthony Gailey, who is a corporate hypnotist,
indeed,
who is semi-retired, he's still doing once a year or twice a year training seminars, which I'd love to go to in Las Vegas. But he lives in Florida, but he makes 10 grand a gig at top name companies doing a stage hypnosis show. But I guarantee you, he knows more about the theory of hypnosis than a lot of hypnotherapists. And by the way, you and I, and you can use this, you were the original coach. And I'm going to have a t-shirt printed up and send your way because you love t-shirts. But it's going to say, I am the OC, the original coach, because all your techniques you teach in the NLP and Hypnosis Bootcamp training are all what now hypnotherapist trainers now are teaching hypnosis and hypnotherapists to do to better their business. And I've noticed Steve Miller, a mutual friend who had a brilliant name of Fatnosis hypnosis there, he's training some hypnotists as well. Jason Lynette, who's a friend of Richard Nongard, who I regard as one of the best hypnotists. Richard, but he, I believe, did stage hypnosis as well.
He did. Yeah, this is true.
And he's still doing it, because I noticed on past interviews, you're like, I think Richard's still doing it. Yeah, and he's teaching hypnotists on how to write their own books as well. And so that's cool. But there are a lot of very excellent hypnotists, but most of them have a performance and or stage hypnosis background. So I saw your post on that, wanted to bring it up. We have a couple times. But with weather and hypnosis, it's been a natural tie-in. I get to do my two passions every day. I do a daily forecast in my third grade handwriting here of the 7-day forecast for El Paso, Texas. We're going to be 91 tomorrow, which, gosh, we're getting into the low 30s Celsius wise. We're getting where we use the H word, hot, but we don't even call it windy until it's 50 kilometers per hour or stronger, because we get such strong winds here in far west Texas. And we have the Chihuahuan Desert in Mexico and the Sonoran Desert to our southwest. So we're super dry. And we only get 8.87 inches of rain a year here. We're the driest city in Texas.
All right.
So whenever it does rain, talk about happiness among the people. And then there's the seasonal disorder they talk about in Oregon and Washington, where I had friends. I had an ex-girlfriend that I still kept in touch with, and I heard screaming in her office. I said, "What's going on?" She goes, "Oh, the sun is peeking out of the clouds." And you're familiar with that in London, because sometimes you go long periods without seeing the sun, right?
Yeah, well, actually, where I am is Manchester, which is famous over here as the place where it kind of rains. I don't know how true it is, but stereotypically, apparently, it rains more in Manchester than anywhere else in England during the course of the year.
Yeah. And, you have one video in the boot camp on sports performance, but I keep telling the local university football team, which every year is terrible, I tell the coach, let me hypnotize the players. Give me your top 5 position players. And I know you've hypnotized actual football teams, soccer teams, we call it soccer over here, but football teams in England that have had success after you worked with them in the past.
And they're very simple techniques. It's not rocket science, dead easy to learn. You don't need to know anything about the sport. Heck, when it comes to football, I don't even know what the offside rule is in soccer in England. No idea what the offside rule is. Other people in the pub watching it would know. But what I can do is help that sports person, that team of players, to unite together, to instinctively know what each other's going to do, to operate in a state of mind so they're in the zone, so to speak, where they feel the best they've ever felt in the past, so that they can believe that it's possible for that to happen again, so that the idea of failing doesn't even enter the head, and that ultimately, using simple mind reprogramming techniques that are taught in the boot camp and that therapists use every day, but using them in a different context, maybe in a slightly different order. I've helped teams get, from where they've been low down in the league, get into the Premiership before now.
Well, I go back and my wife says, is this from the dinosaur age? But I have cassette tape player that I still listen to. And back when I was in middle school, Anthony Robbins, he now goes by Tony, had unlimited power.
Yes,
and every motivational speaker quotes his quotes, but never gives them credit. I always attribute, just like I did with Gary Bracca or you, the sayings, because if someone has that saying, they need to get credit. But Tony Robbins, and this is hypnosis, says whenever you fly, the flight attendants say, in event of an in-air emergency, oxygen masks drop from the ceiling. What do? You put it on yourself first, and then you help your kids and those around you. And I have so many parents that say, oh no, I would help my son or daughter first. Well, how can you help them if you're passed out from no oxygen, right?
Exactly.
Here in hypnotherapy, we help you find the oxygen. We help you in competitive sports to find that ultimate peak performance state of mind.
You've got to be selfish to be selfless. Is the way I put it.
Exactly. So anyway, you and I could probably talk for 4 hours or more, and we need to, maybe even off camera.
Do you know what? We will probably leave it a month or two while everyone who's going to see or hear this season hears it, and then I think we can quite easily do another one.
And then I'll be over my allergies and my little sinus cough. But this has been, like I said, it was on my whiteboard to be part of your Hypnosis Week interviews.
Well, thank you for coming on and sharing, because it always has occurred to me, and you've now explained kindly to the viewers and listeners, how those things that overlap. I know at first sight or listening, people might have thought, weatherman into therapist, how does that kind of correlate? But it correlates really, really well. Yeah, it certainly does.
Not only in the performance, and guess what? A lot of times I'll break the ice for the in-person hypnotherapy sessions, which, by the way, I tell the clients, you're going to leave the old version of yourself wandering around Chaparral Estates, the 1970s neighborhood I live in here. In fact, in my living room, I have a disco 1970s wet bar with 1970s wallpaper and a sink in the middle of the living room. But anyway,
Nice.
you know, beverages were a priority back in the 70s. And I have a plastic intercom system we haven't taken off yet between rooms before cell phones, and where you'd say, hey, it's time for dinner. Or you could play very monotone music through the stereo speaker of the things. But I tell my clients, we left the old version of you outside. And the new, higher vibrating version is going to repel the 5 former people you spend the most time with. And my wife told me the saying in Spanish, but it basically goes, show me the 5 people you spend the most time with, and I'll tell you what you're smoking. But it is so true. The people's bad habits, mainly, and sometimes positive, will impact you. And that's why I love the saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, leave and find another room, because you're not being challenged, you're not learning and growing. So just like today, I'm learning and growing. And if you can believe, after this couple-hour podcast, I have a client coming up right now who I just text, but he's a business client. And after his first session, he said, oh my God, I don't know what it is, but I'm sleeping better. And then I feel like there's an invisible force motivating me to accomplish things. And in the last week since our session, which has never happened before, I had a strategy call. I give out free consultations. And he said, can we start with the first session now? And I said, well, I've got to do some weather scripts for my boss, my wife, but let's start in 30 minutes. And a week ago Friday, we started 30 minutes after the strategy call, and he had his first session. And today is his second session, but it's in business hypnosis. Now, is that name kind of disguised to help other challenges that common hypnotherapy clients would come to see me for? Yeah. But we are all the same. And we're all part of those hierarchy of needs. And we all have faltering in our self-image, our self-esteem, our self-love, our self-confidence. And Chase Hughes, who is a hypnotist who was for the Naval Intelligence, does some contract work for the 3-letter organizations in the US, but he has a behavioral panel that takes criminals and takes behavioral tics, and he uses his hypnotic observation. But he said the best thing for your self-confidence, you need to be the calmest person in the room. No matter how nervous you are inside, if you appear calm, and that means listening more than talking, which is tough for me and you sometimes, but your self-confidence level will be perceived by others to be high. So there you go. I'll leave you with that little nugget right there.
Right, so thank you for a most interesting, informative and enlightening, yeah, a couple of hours. Have fun with your client. And
yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, viewers and listeners, Please like this video or podcast post where you see it. Please share this so that other people can hear and see the message. Please make a comment below in the box because that helps the algorithms on the social media platforms. And of course, also check out the links above or below this video, or where you get your podcast symbol, where you will find the link to Chuck's website, social media, YouTube channel and whatnot, and also, of course, to the Elite Hypnosis Bootcamp. Thank you once again, Chuck. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. And you'll get Weather social media, Chuck DeBroder, but then there's Chuck DeBroder Facebook. Also with the emojis, always use a heart, angry, laughing, crying. It scores more points with Facebook. Facebook scores the thumbs up 0 on people's posts. Right. So always use the heart. That's my little...
There's a nugget for you to use and encourage your potential viewers of your videos on your platforms. Don't use the thumbs up if you like it. Use one of the other emojis. It'll get more interaction. Fantastic. Thank you for that piece of gold. Thank you, boys, girls, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. Please share this far and wide. As always, I'm Jonathan Royal, aka Alex William Smith. It's a wonderful guest, Chuck DeBroder. We'll see you next time for another edition of Hypnosis Week.